Chapter 131. You need to be safe, not just careful, Benjamin said in a bitter tone. Orissa smiled. She couldn't understand why Benjamin was getting angry over this matter. Watching her rubbing her nose, his stern expression softened. He gently pulled her hand away and examined the slightly red nose. Frowning, he held onto her hand and led her into the living room. Edwin, bring the medical box here. He called out. Yes, Mr. Graham, Edwin answered and hurriedly went to get it. Orissa glanced at Benjamin, who was gripping her wrist tightly. She could feel the warmth of his hand tingling on her skin. Her heart was racing again. Benjamin led her to the couch and made her sit down. Edwin was beside them in a flash with the medical box in his arms. Here, Mr. Graham. He opened the lid and passed it to Benjamin, his gaze falling onto Orissa. Did you get hurt, Miss York? It's nothing, she replied, feeling awkward. Benjamin glared at her and took out an ointment. Put your hand away. She looked at the serious man in front of her and put down her hand. He gently rubbed the ointment onto her nose and her arm. Get Sean to come, Benjamin ordered. It shocked Edwin when he saw the bruises on Orissa's arm and hurried away to call Sean to the Graham residence. Orissa didn't know why Benjamin was calling someone over. She scanned the room, unable to catch a glimpse of Gavin. Where is Gavin? He has gone to a classmate's house and has not returned, Edwin said with a smile on his face. Classmate, don't tell me he's at my house. She smiled as she met Benjamin's gaze. Mr. Graham, my friend is taking care of my child. Why don't you call the person you sent to return? An image of Bradley immediately flashed through Benjamin's mind and he squinted his eyes at her. His gaze was sharp, and his tone was laced with menace. What friend? A good friend of mine, she exclaimed, suddenly feeling anxious. He shot her a look and scoffed. Your child will be safer here. Edwin stared at the two of them and asked in curiosity, Miss York, do you have kids as well? Orissa smiled and nodded. Yes, I do. Edwin stole a glance at Benjamin. If Mr. Graham likes Miss York, then they're a perfect match. They both have children and won't feel resentment towards one another over this matter. Miss York, are you hungry? Edwin asked. Let me bring you some snacks. No, that's all right. Orissa smiled. Bring them here, Benjamin coldly ordered Edwin. Yes, sir. Edwin bowed and hurried to prepare some snacks, the corners of his lips curving into a smile. It's been a while since I saw Mr. Graham care for someone. Benjamin sat himself down beside Orissa. Suddenly, she felt immense pressure with him beside her. His aura was just too imposing. Mr. Graham, please don't mind me and go ahead with your business. I'll just sit here and wait. It was so awkward that she had to break the silence. Do you know which classmate's house my son is at? Benjamin suddenly asked. Orissa stuttered and shook her head. Sorry, but I don't know. He turned to look at her. However, she would look at anywhere but him. He could sense that she was guilty about lying. The corner of his lips twitched into a smirk as he purposely leaned towards her. You're lying, he whispered into her ear. Orissa felt her heart skip a beat as she moved to the other side of the couch, trying to escape from him. Benjamin noticed what she was trying to do and chuckled. Who says that I'm lying? I've been doing overtime all this while and haven't been able to contact Gavin. She denied his accusation. In fact, she had only guessed that Gavin was at her home. Bradley is taking care of them. Who knows if they're still at home or outside. Chapter 132. Benjamin sent someone to pick up the kids. Does that mean he's bringing all of them here? There are 4. Even if only one is being brought here, he will definitely find out. Really? Why do I feel that you're lying? Benjamin's gaze was piercing as he stared at her. Orissa was at a loss for words. Suddenly, Edwin walked in with a tray full of food. Miss York, please have some snacks, he said as he placed the tray on the table. Have you had dinner? I can prepare some delicious dishes for you. It was hard for Orissa to decline when met with such an enthusiastic person. She nodded and said, please. Thank you. You're welcome. Edwin bowed and turned to Benjamin. Mr. Graham, would you like to have dinner as well? Yes. Benjamin nodded. Edwin bowed and left the living room to prepare. Orissa stared at the exquisite snacks on the tray and stole a glance at Benjamin. Seeing him occupied with his phone, she leaned forward, took a snack, and munched on it. She also took out her phone and noticed that Zachary had sent her a message. "Mommy, are you not done with work yet?" Marissa's lips curved into a smile as she typed in a reply. Benjamin glanced at her. "Don't play with your phone if you're eating." Her hand trembled, and the phone slid out of her grip, falling onto the floor. She quickly bent down to pick it up. Benjamin's lips curved to form a small smile as she returned to her previous posture after picking up her phone. "Are you nervous?" Marissa turned to look at an expressionless Benjamin, unable to figure out what he was thinking. "And no, I'm fine," she smiled awkwardly. Benjamin nodded and leaned forward to pour a glass of water before giving it to her. "Do you think the person I sent will be able to pick up your kid?" he asked, his gaze piercing into her soul. On the surface, she received the glass with both hands and politely muttered, "Thank you." However, in her mind, she was panicking. "Thank you for your concern, Mr. Graham, but my child is with my friend. How about you have the person you sent bring Gavin home instead?" She felt Benjamin was being weird, but she just couldn't put a finger as to why. Benjamin calmly replied, "My son is with your kid." "Ah," she pretended to be shocked. "What a coincidence. Are they classmates? I didn't know that." He frowned at her fake expression and scoffed. "What wonderful acting. Why isn't she honest with me after all that has happened?" "They go to the same school," Benjamin replied harshly as he tapped his forefinger on his thigh. The sight of him was intimidating. Marissa couldn't help but gulp and bring the glass to her lips to take a sip. "Oh gosh, my heart is beating so fast." He couldn't have found out, could he? "How did you know that, Mr. Graham?" Benjamin's eyes flickered upon that question, and he immediately glared at her. "Marissa, just how long are you going to spin your lies?" Her heart skipped a beat. She did not know what to answer, as she wasn't sure what he was referring to. "Mr. Graham, I really do not know what you mean," she said carefully, not wanting to upset him further. "Do you not have anything else to say to me?" he asked through clenched teeth, seeing that she was still playing dumb. Excuse me." She wasn't sure if he had found out about the kids and didn't dare to bring it up to him first. His expression darkened, and his aura turned cold. She was sitting at the other end of the couch, thinking of what to say or do next. His eyebrows knitted together, rage building up in him. He hated seeing her being like this. Without saying a word, he got up and headed toward his study. Marissa let out a breath that she didn't know she was holding. She calmed herself down by munching on a few more snacks and proceeded to call her son. Zachary picked up the phone quickly. "Mommy, what time are you coming home?" Marissa felt guilty. "Sorry, sweetheart, I can't go home yet. I'm at Gavin's house." "Is Gavin with you all?" she asked in a low tone. "Yeah, we're together. Mr. Hinton is here too." "Mommy, why are you at Gavin's house?" "I can't explain it through the phone, but I got into some trouble." She sighed. "Someone is going to pick up Gavin later. Can you please do Mommy a favor and tell them that the rest of you are staying with Mr. Hinton?" Chapter 133. Marissa didn't dare explain much to her son, afraid that he might worry too much. Instead, she reminded him of a few other things. "Don't worry, Mommy, I'll take good care of them," Zachary promised. "What a good boy. I love you, sweetheart." Marissa praised her son before saying, "Could you please pass the phone to Mr. Hinton?" "All right." In a few seconds, Bradley's voice was heard from the other end of the phone. "Boss, it's me. A group of people ambushed me when I got off work and Benjamin helped me. I'm at his place right now, but it's not convenient for me to go back. Please look after my kids and make sure everything is all right," Marissa briefly explained. "Understood. Are you okay, boss?" Bradley asked, careful not to show that he was worried. He didn't want the kids to notice. "Yes, it's nothing I can't handle." Marissa paused before continuing, "Don't tell the kids. I don't want them to worry. There will be someone going over to pick up Gavin later. Have the kids return to their rooms by then." Her eyes flickered to Benjamin, who was coming out from the study. "He's coming back, so I'm going to hang up now. Call me if you need anything." "Understood. Don't worry, boss. I'll take good care of them. Orissa quickly ended the call. Benjamin walked into the living room and glanced at Orissa, who was trying her best to act casual. She continued to munch on the snacks while he stood there, not knowing what to do. She thought it was weird how he just stood there and turned to look at him. Suddenly, their eyes met, and she quickly averted her gaze. It wasn't long before she looked at him once more. Benjamin was still staring at her. She couldn't handle the awkwardness any longer, so she cleared her throat and asked, "Mr. Graham, may I please know why are you staring at me?" It was weird how he was just staring at her silently. His gaze was fixated on her, still silent. At that moment, they could hear the roaring of a car engine from the entrance, as though someone had just arrived. Shortly after, they could hear the car stop. Soon, there was the sound of a car door opening and closing, followed by hurried footsteps. It seemed like that person was in a rush. Orissa curiously turned around to look. "Benjamin, are you hurt?" Sean asked with worry, carrying his own medical box as he stalked towards them. His eyes widened in shock when he noticed that there was a woman sitting in the living room. "Why you are?" Sean was speechless. He looked at Orissa, then at Benjamin. His eyes scanned Benjamin up and down, and it seemed like he was fine. "Have a look at her." Benjamin gave him a stern look. Sean came back to his senses and glanced at both of them. "You're not hurt, Benjamin." "Do I look like I got hurt?" Benjamin scoffed. The corner of Sean's lips twitched. He came rushing, thinking that Benjamin was injured. But the person who was supposedly hurt didn't look that much injured as well. He placed his medical box on the table and glanced at Orissa. "She seems familiar." "Benjamin, who is she? Why does she look so familiar?" "Just have a look at her arm. See if she has broken any bones," Benjamin ordered, his tone cold as he cut off Sean's gossiping. Sean stared at Benjamin and noticed the latter's frown because of how worried he was about Orissa. What a rare sight, to think that Benjamin could be worried about someone. "Who are you?" he asked as he turned to look at Orissa. Orissa smiled. "I'm Orissa." "Oh." He looked her up and down, strongly feeling the sense of familiarity. Suddenly, a thought popped into his mind. He yelled out in shock. Could you be Gavin's biological mother? The more he thought about it, the more certain he was. Looking at Orissa, he could see the resemblance between her and Gavin. Their eyes and chin looked similar. Orissa was rendered speechless. How is he so good at noticing the resemblance? "Sean!" Benjamin shouted. A chill ran down Sean's back at his name being called, and he came back to his senses. He quickly but carefully held onto Orissa's arm to look at her bruises. Chapter 134. When Sean saw the large bruise on Orissa's arm, he gasped in shock. "Who did this to you?" Just as he was about to check her injury, Orissa's face was contorted with pain. Noticing her reaction, Benjamin, who was standing at the side, frowned and shouted at Sean, "Be gentle." His action brought a small smile onto Sean's face. "Since you don't bring her to the hospital for an X-ray, I can only perform a physical assessment on her," Sean explained. "She has to endure the pain. If I don't do this, it is impossible to know if she has a broken bone." Benjamin's dashing face turned sullen and grim upon hearing that. Cold sweat trickled down Orissa's forehead while Sean continued on with the physical assessment. It was so painful that the corner of her lips started to twitch. "Does she have a fracture?" Benjamin asked coldly. "Nope, she is fine," Sean answered with a grin on his face. Upon hearing the good news, Benjamin let out a sigh of relief. Orissa rubbed her injured arm gently, trying to relieve the pain. "You need to apply some ointment on it. Make sure you use enough of it. Do it every few hours, and you'll recover in a few days," Sean reminded. "Thank you," Orissa answered politely. Sean took the ointment and wanted to apply it for her. However, before he managed to do that, Benjamin grabbed the topical medication away from him. Feeling amused by his action, Sean backed away. "Give me your arm." Benjamin took a glance at Orissa. Noticing Sean's teasing gaze, she felt embarrassed and wanted to reject Benjamin. "I can do it myself." Despite that, he grabbed her arm and started to apply some ointment on her. "Ouch!" She gritted her teeth and screamed in pain. "It hurts so much. Please be gentle." Standing at the side, Sean wanted to burst out laughing. Orissa wanted to retrieve her arm, but she was stopped by Benjamin. The way he applied the ointment was so painful that she broke out in cold sweat. Is he applying medication for me or trying to hurt me? Mr. Graham, I can do it myself. You're hurting me, Orissa yelled, suppressing the urge to berate him. Don't move. Benjamin raised his voice at her sternly. It was so painful that she started to get misty-eyed. Can't you be gentler? Upon hearing her pitiful tone, Benjamin was startled and cast her a glance. Does it hurt a lot? He smiled faintly when he saw the tears brimming in her eyes. Of course, she muttered. Meanwhile, Sean was regaled, expecting that Benjamin would be angry. Benjamin is doing this for your own good. It will help your bruise to disappear faster. Sean tried to comfort her. Orissa was bemused. Bear with it a little. It'll be over soon. Benjamin tried to apply the ointment gently, causing her heart to skip a beat. However, the sharp pain jolted her back to her senses. All she wanted to do was scream. Even though Benjamin had reduced his force, it was still causing her pain. Hi, beautiful, why haven't I seen you around before? How did you get to know Benjamin? Sean turned to Orissa, feeling eager to know about her. I came back from overseas recently, and now I'm working at Mr. Graham's company, she replied. Sean nodded and looked at the duo, his gaze ambiguous. So both of you are colleagues. Why are you here then? Orissa felt awkward. Something happened to me, so Mr. Graham brought me here for my safety. I see, he smiled. You're spending the night here. She was rendered speechless by his question. You're not needed anymore. Scram. Benjamin stared coldly at Sean. Sean stared back at him in disbelief. Are you chasing me out after all the help I'd given you? You did nothing to help me. Benjamin retorted as he finished applying the ointment on Orissa's arm. Leaning against the couch, she heaved a sigh of relief and rubbed her injured arm. It hurts so much. The corner of Sean's lips twitched. However, before he managed to say anything, Benjamin cut him off. Edwin, see him out. Sean was struck dumb. Chapter 135. Sean was soon sent away by the butler. Hence, only Orissa and Benjamin were left in the living room. During the ensuing silence, she gazed at him contemplatively. When she met his gaze, her heart skipped a beat. Does it still hurt? He asked, glancing at her arm. After he looked at the bruise, his face fell. It's better now, she muttered lowly, quickly averting her eyes as her heart raced. Without saying a word, he got up and headed toward the kitchen. Orissa looked at him curiously, wondering what he was going to do. After a while, Benjamin came back to her with something in his hand. Upon seeing that he was coming back to her, she awkwardly averted her gaze away from him. Feeling something cold on her arm all of a sudden, she turned around and looked at him in bewilderment. Put some ice on your arm. You'll feel better, Benjamin said softly. Looking at his exquisite facial features, she could not help but find him stunning. Thank you, let me do it myself. Orissa tried to take the ice pack from Benjamin, but she was stopped by him. Don't move, he shot a look at her. She was once again rendered speechless. Does he have to be so serious? Sneaking a glance at his face, she pursed her lips and kept silent. As she looked to the ground, she seemed to be lost in thought. Noticing her silence, Benjamin raised his eyebrows and said, Don't worry. You can stay here for now. She looked up at him and asked, Wouldn't it be inappropriate for me to stay at your place? I've just worked for a few days, and now I am moving into my boss's house. I can't imagine the consequences if the media finds out about this. Why would it be inappropriate? He held her gaze firmly. Orissa blinked in response, not saying a word. Are you worried that I'm interested in you? Benjamin sneered. The corner of her mouth twitched at his words. I'm worried that people might misunderstand us. It might ruin your reputation. Besides, it will also bring me endless troubles. When she felt that his gaze was still fixed on her, her heart started to race again. Don't worry, nobody will know as long as you keep your mouth shut, Benjamin answered flatly. She wasn't pleased to hear that, as she thought that Benjamin was implying that she was a gossiper. I'm not a gossiper. Orissa raised her voice. He merely gave her a quick glance in response and continued to ice her bruise. 10 minutes later, he asked Edwin to bring her to the guest room. With that, she was led to the guest room, which was located near Benjamin's bedroom. "Miss York, if you need anything else, let me know." Orissa scanned the lavishly decorated room and smiled. "Sure, I'll let you know if I need anything." Edwin nodded with a smile and informed her of the toiletries in the bathroom before going back downstairs to prepare some food. After Orissa walked around the room for a while, she lay on the bed to relax. The kids are at home. Did Benjamin's people manage to find them? Will they bring the kids here? Just when she wanted to make a call, she heard the sound of a car's engine coming from downstairs. Then, she heard a child calling for her. Unsure, Orissa listened carefully. "Mommy." It was Gavin's voice. Feeling excited, she desperately wanted to see her son. Without hesitation, she opened the door and rushed toward the voice. Currently, Gavin was talking with Benjamin at the bottom of the stairs. She let out a sigh of relief when she realized that her other children were not brought here. "Sweetheart, you're back," Orissa blurted. When Gavin saw her standing at the second floor, he couldn't help but smile. "Mommy," Gavin called, rushing toward her. He was currently wearing school uniforms and carrying his bag. Chapter 136. As Gavin ran up the stairs, he looked adorable with his bag swinging behind him. Orissa broke into a smile. The radiance of her motherly love was evident on her face. Slow down, you might trip." She hurried toward her child. In return, Gavin wrapped his arms around her leg and shouted merrily, "Mommy." "Hey." Orissa picked him up and pinched his little face. "Why are you so late?" Gavin looked at her and smiled. "I was playing with my classmate at his house." Orissa chuckled before she whispered, "Your daddy knows that you were at my house." Hearing that, Gavin stole a glance at Benjamin. The latter was standing in the living room, looking at the mother and son, his expression impossible to read. Orissa looked at him before carrying Gavin upstairs. "Gavin, have you had your dinner?" "Yes, we had plenty of delicious food," Gavin answered softly. Orissa listened to him with much interest as she carried him to the child's room before letting him down. Then, she put his bag aside and stroked his hair. "Do you want me to bathe you?" "Mommy, I can bathe myself," Gavin replied shyly. Looking at his cute face, Orissa smiled and pinched his nose. "All right, you bathe yourself, and I'm going to shower too." He nodded and exclaimed, "Mommy, are you really staying here?" "Yeah," she answered with a smile and looked at the door. She then lowered her voice and asked, "Are Zachary and the others with Mr. Hinton?" "Yes." Gavin nodded his head. "They went into hiding before anyone saw them. We came back right after that." She chuckled and hugged him. "Let's go and take a shower. We'll see who is the faster one." "Okay." He nodded and ran toward the bathroom. Orissa's gaze was fixed on Gavin as he ran into the bathroom. She shook her head with a smile before going back to the guest room. Gavin showered quickly. When he was done, he sent Zachary a text before he went to look for his mother. He went to the door of the guest room's bathroom and yelled, "Mommy, I'm done." "Are you done yet?" "Sweetheart, you're so fast. I'm going to take a while. Wait for a moment." Orissa was surprised. After that, he stood in front of the door and talked with her. "Mommy, why did Daddy ask you to come here?" Maybe he thinks that it is safer for me to stay here. I was almost kidnapped yesterday." Orissa didn't dare to tell him about the incident. Since I'm not sure how Benjamin will tell Gavin about the incident, it's more appropriate to give Gavin a vague answer. Besides, it's not a lie that Benjamin indeed brought me here to keep me safe. "Mommy, don't you worry. It's really safe here. But what about my brothers?" Gavin lowered his voice as he asked, "Will they stay with Mr. Hinton?" "I guess that's all we can do for the time being." Orissa sighed. "Mommy, why don't you tell Daddy the truth? Once Daddy sees them, he will know that he has been tricked by Donna. Then, we can all stay together. It is safer for them too," he said after analyzing the situation. She had thought about what he had said as well. However, she couldn't take the risk before she was sure how Benjamin would react to it. "Should I tell Benjamin? I managed to get away yesterday because I caught them off guard. Tonight, I was lucky to meet Benjamin. However, it doesn't mean that I will be lucky every time. If they send more people in the future, it will be harder for me to get away unharmed. It is hard for me to guard myself against the enemy. Chapter 137. Okay, I will tell him. Orisa nodded. I can't put my kid's life at risk. Donna took away 2 of my children. Now, she's trying to kill the rest of us. It's impossible that she would suddenly turn over a new leaf. I'm sure those men were sent by her. As she continued to ponder, she narrowed her eyes. Maybe I can discuss with Benjamin tonight. Gavin waited for Orisa with a smile on his face. Knowing that her son was waiting for her, she quickly finished her shower and came out of the bathroom. Mommy, Gavin greeted her with a smile. Upon seeing him, she bent down and kissed his face over and over again. Sweetheart, have you waited me for a long time? He shook his head. Just for a few minutes. His answer amused Orisa, and she pinched on his cheek affectionately. Just then, Edwin came upstairs to call her for dinner. Nodding, she carried Gavin downstairs. Sweetheart, let's get dinner. Mommy, didn't you eat at Daddy's company? Gavin looked at her without blinking. I did, she answered with an affectionate smile. Sweetheart, thank you for bringing me lunch today. Stunned, he stated, Mommy, I didn't bring you lunch. It wasn't you. Why would your daddy tell me that it was from you? Orisa was puzzled as well. Soon, realization dawned on Gavin. Daddy lied to get close to Mommy. Gavin grinned cheekily and said, Mommy, I think Daddy was the one who brought you lunch. When she heard that, the corner of her lips twitched again. Why would Benjamin say that? Was he afraid that I wouldn't accept it? Oh, he said that it was from Gavin after he found out that I wanted to leave. Her mind went blank for a moment. By the time they entered the dining room, Benjamin had been waiting for them at the dining table. Upon hearing their footsteps, he turned toward them. Her heart skipped a beat when she locked eyes with him. She quickly composed herself and smiled at him politely. Come and eat. Benjamin swept a glance at them. Okay. She carried Gavin to the seat beside Benjamin. Benjamin glanced at Gavin and said, Haven't you have your dinner? While Orisa fixated her eyes on Gavin, their son flicked a glance at Benjamin and answered, I feel hungry again. Well, I want to be with Mommy. In response, Benjamin glanced at him without saying a word. Gavin needs to eat more. It is good for his health, Orisa said as she could not stand watching Benjamin being so stern toward Gavin. Why doesn't he want Gavin to eat with us? All parents want their children to eat more. Usually, I even make supper for my children after eating. Hearing her words, Benjamin shot her a glance and did not say more. Seeing that Benjamin had allowed Gavin to have dinner, Edwin brought Gavin a bowl. Gavin, would you like to have some soup? Edwin asked with a smile. Gavin nodded. Sure, thank you, Mr. Whitley. The butler then served the soup to Gavin. Let's eat. Benjamin grabbed a fork and dug in. After Orisa spared Benjamin a glance, she noticed that Gavin was blowing on his soup. Knowing that hers was not as hot as his, she said, Gavin, you can have mine. It's not hot. Her serving was colder, as it was served earlier. Hence, she gave hers to her son. Thank you, Mommy. Gavin grinned. You're welcome. Enjoy your soup. She stroked his hair lovingly. Yes, he replied with a bright smile. Benjamin, who was sitting at the side, narrowed his eyes when he saw the way Orisa looked at Gavin. Chapter 138. Edwin stood at the side and glanced at Gavin. Then, he turned to look at Orisa, who was ever so loving to Gavin. She patiently showered Gavin with her endearing motherly love. This made Edwin baffled. Orisa is so loving to Gavin, even though she's not his real mom. In contrast, Donna is so cruel to Gavin. She is incomparable to Orisa. Meanwhile, Orisa looked at Gavin attentively as she tried to get him to eat more. For her, it was absolute bliss as she fussed over her little boy. However, as she was going to feed him, Benjamin halted her. He threw a glance at her and muttered in his deep voice, Let Gavin eat on his own. With that, Orisa looked at Benjamin and relented. Gavin, too, peered at Benjamin and ate on his own obediently. After a while, he took some food and offered it to Orisa. Mommy, this is yummy. Have some more of this. Immensely moved by his gesture, Orissa stroked Gavin's head affectionately. "Thank you, sweetheart." Benjamin's eyes glistened brightly as he caught sight of Orissa's blissful smile. Even Edwin had the corners of his mouth upturned in a faint smile as he basked in the affectionate atmosphere. Finally, he felt the warmth of a loving family as it had been some time since he last saw a smile on Gavin's face. "Miss York, do you like the dishes today?" asked Edwin with a polite smile. "Yes, these dishes are delicious." "Edwin, I can't match up with your culinary skills," praised Orissa wholeheartedly. At that moment, Benjamin interrupted the happy mood with his abrupt view. "There's no need to flatter, Edwin. Actually, I prefer your dishes instead." In the blink of an eye, he rendered Edwin and Orissa speechless. After Gavin peeked at Benjamin, he smiled and remarked, "Mommy's dishes are delicious too." With a bright smile, Orissa looked lovingly into Gavin's dazzling eyes. Then, she stroked his head gently and gushed, "Thank you, sweetheart. Let's finish our meal first." After Gavin beamed a smile, they continued with their meal. As Benjamin watched the happy exchange between Orissa and Gavin, he couldn't help but feel displeased. His brows furrowed at the contrast between how Orissa treated Gavin compared to him. This was more pronounced as Orissa called Gavin by his nickname. The more Benjamin thought about it, the more it annoyed him. On the other hand, Edwin sneaked a peek at Benjamin and sniggered away. "It seems Mr. Graham has the hots for Miss York. He's finally showing more emotion than his usual self." Under Benjamin's watchful eyes, Orissa finally finished her meal with Gavin. After they were done, Gavin couldn't wait to drag Orissa out for a walk. "Mommy, let's go for a stroll." "All right then," Orissa agreed, as she usually gave in to the kids' requests. So, she held on to Gavin's little hands, and off they went. Before they stepped out, Gavin turned around to look at Benjamin. He shouted, "Daddy, are you coming with us?" Benjamin glanced at them and frowned slightly. He was apprehensive about joining them, as he knew Orissa was still guarded against him. "It's okay, I'm busy at the moment. You guys have a good time out there," replied Benjamin reluctantly. "Okay." Gavin glimpsed at Benjamin and turned away, all ready for his stroll. After Orissa heard that, she nodded at Benjamin in acknowledgement and went off with Gavin. Soon after, Orissa and Gavin arrived at the garden, where they strolled leisurely. "Mommy, how do you like this place?" asked Gavin. "I like it. It's beautiful," replied Orissa. She took a panoramic view around the garden under the moonlight. With a mesmerized smile, Orissa immersed herself in the elegance of the surroundings. "Mommy, how are you adjusting to life here?" asked Gavin as he tugged at her hand. "I'm doing okay," replied Orissa, as she gazed into his eyes and stroked his head lovingly. Gavin smiled contently and asked her next, "Mommy, when are you going to tell Daddy?" With that, Orissa was stumped for a while. She instinctively turned to look in the direction of the house. From a distance, an elongated silhouette of a man stood before the floor-to-ceiling glass window. It looked like Benjamin was amid a call. She then retracted her gaze and turned to answer Gavin, "I'll do it when he has the time." He followed suit and looked at the house with a nod. "Mommy, do you like Daddy or not?" questioned Gavin relentlessly, with a serious look on his face. Orissa looked confoundedly into Gavin's eyes and searched hard for an answer. "Well, we're still getting to know each other. Besides, he's my boss for now," explained Orissa. Once again, Gavin nodded in agreement. Then he continued with curiosity, "How were we conceived in the past?" Orissa fell into a daze as she recalled the painful memories from 5 years ago. Chapter 139. Back then, Orissa slept with Benjamin errantly after an elaborate setup. However, she did not want to go into detail with Gavin that day. So, she lowered her body and held on to Gavin's tiny shoulders. In an earnest tone, she explained, "You're still too young. I'll explain it to you when you're older. For now, just know that I love you all." With a soft touch, Orissa gently caressed Gavin's cheek. He smiled coyly in return and said, "Now, I know. Before this, I assumed you abandoned me." Instantly, a sharp pain tore through Orissa's heart. Guilt-ridden, she pulled Gavin into an embrace right away and comforted him, "It's all my fault. I failed to protect you." Orissa knew if she had been more careful, Donna would have had no chance to nab him. "Mommy, I don't blame you at all. The baddies were just too evil," uttered Gavin, who had his brows tightly knit in a bunch. When he had a look of hostility swept across his face, one could clearly see that Gavin took after Benjamin indeed. Orissa knew Donna would not let her off so easily. The latter was even mean to Jasper. Overwhelmed by emotions, she drew a deep breath. In a bittersweet tone, she muttered, "Thank you, sweetheart." After kissing Gavin on his cheek, she felt a warm assurance as he stroked her hair consolingly. "Mommy, I didn't know that vicious woman was not my real mommy before. I only know she doesn't love me. In fact, it's a relief to know that she isn't my real mommy," blurted Gavin. Orissa's heart was in turmoil once again, as she saw how sensible Gavin was. This was despite the fact that he was deprived of motherly love from such a young age. "Sweetheart, has she been mean to you?" asked Orissa. With much care, she lifted Gavin and placed him on her lap. As they sat on the rocking chair in the garden, Orissa couldn't help but feel heartbroken. In response, Gavin shook his head. "Well, she's mean to me sometimes." After Gavin noticed Orissa's worried expression, he felt elated that she cared for him. He went on, "Daddy does not like it when I'm out alone with her. Well, she isn't fond of me either. It's clear that she's making use of me to get close to Daddy." As such, Donna was just another acquainted adult in Gavin's life, with no emotional attachment. When she heard that, Orissa stroked Gavin's head again. "Sweetheart, I am sorry. It's okay, Mommy, I don't blame you at all. Daddy has been protective of me," comforted Gavin as he wrapped his arms around Orissa in a hug. Conscience-stricken, Orissa felt worse when she realized how doting Gavin was. Back then, the consequences would have been dire if Donna had not brought Gavin to Benjamin. The thought of that made Orissa so emotional that she hugged Gavin even tighter than before. At that moment, her phone rang. She looked at the phone and realized it was Zachary on the line. Gavin peeked at the phone and chirped, "It's Zachary." Orissa settled herself down and answered the call with a slight smile. "Hi, sweetheart." "Mommy, are you turning in soon?" asked Zachary on the line. "Well, not yet. I'm taking a stroll in the garden with Gavin," answered Orissa softly. Zachary went on, "Have you guys had your dinner?" "Yes, we ate. Mr. Hinton bought plenty of delicious food," replied Orissa. "Mommy, how is Benjamin treating you?" Oliver hollered. Orissa couldn't help but break into a smile. "Not too bad." Jasper joined in, too. "Mommy, how long will you be there?" "Just a few days. Be good and obey Mr. Hinton. Don't be mischievous, understand?" said Orissa. "Mommy, are you in some kind of trouble?" Zachary asked worriedly, as he found it peculiar that Orissa needed to be there for a few days. "Well, my boss thinks the kidnappers may strike again. For my safety, he wants me to stay put here first," quipped Orissa. Zachary replied skeptically, "Mommy, are you lying to me?" Meanwhile, Gavin found it queer the longer he looked at Orissa. He had a hunch that she wasn't telling the truth. "Why would I lie to you?" Orissa smiled again. "Mommy, let's chat for a while more," gushed Jessie meekly. Orissa agreed to Jessie lovingly, and she chatted with them for a while more. After some time, she finally ended the call. "Mommy, are you in some predicament?" asked Gavin, with his forehead knitted tightly in a frown. Orissa rubbed his forehead and replied, "Nope, everything is fine." Gavin wasn't about to give up. He pressed on, "Mommy, is someone trying to kidnap you again?" Looking at Gavin, Orissa realized how intelligent he was. However, she was hesitant about telling him the truth. "Tell me the truth, Mommy. I won't tell the rest," urged Gavin with furrowed brows. "Don't overthink it. Mommy is fine," replied Orissa, as she playfully pinched his cheeks. "Let's go back now. We'll see if Daddy is free now." Gavin's eyes lit up brightly like glittery stars in the dark sky. "Are you finally going to tell Daddy?" Chapter 140. After gently pinching Gavin's cherubic cheeks, Orissa chuckled. "Well, that depends on the situation. Mommy, hurry up and make it clear to Daddy. He's not the type who will lose his head in love. I mean," Gavin stuck his tongue out in jest as he explained, flabbergasted. Daddy and Donna are not even close, Mommy. In fact, they have long gone their separate ways. When Arissa realized Gavin's efforts to score brownie points for Benjamin, she laughed with amusement. Okay, I got it. I'm rational enough to see the facts for myself. With his eyes squinted in half moons, Gavin chortled delightfully. As Arissa held Gavin's hand on their return, she turned to look in the direction of the balcony again. This time, Benjamin was no longer there. After they returned to the house, Edwin approached them with some cheesecake he had made. Try the cheesecake, Miss York, offered Edwin. Thank you. After that, Arissa sat down with Gavin and tucked into the cheesecake. Is it delicious, Mommy? Gavin tugged at her arm and asked softly. It tastes great. Arissa leaned in toward Gavin and wiped his mouth. Gavin smiled from cheek to cheek. His eyes radiated warm affection nourished with Arissa's tender care. Arissa rubbed his head gently in a doting manner. Have more slices, Miss York, urged Edwin enthusiastically with a grin. I have room for 2 slices at most. Why don't you have a slice too? Said Arissa with a luscious smile, looking at Edwin standing at the side. Please enjoy the cheesecake, Miss York. I will excuse myself for now with some chores. If you need anything else, please call out for me. After that, Edwin got ready to leave. Sure, Arissa nodded in reply. She continued relishing the cheesecake with Gavin. Soon, Gavin handed her another slice of cheesecake. Here, Mommy, have this. Thank you, sweetheart. Arissa took over the slice of cheesecake from him. When she noticed he had not finished his slice, she playfully pinched his nose. Sweetheart, why are you taking so long to finish your slice? Arissa teased him. I will finish it little by little, Mommy. With that, Gavin snugged up to Arissa affectionately and sat by her side. With his mouth full of cheesecake and legs dangling by the couch, Gavin looked incredibly adorable. From a top-down view, Arissa admired Gavin's long, luscious lashes. He was a good-looking boy whose features were immaculately outstanding. In fact, Arissa couldn't help but feel exalted. After all, she had given birth to such a handsome boy. Are you going to bring Daddy a piece of cheesecake? Asked Gavin innocently. Huh, replied Arissa, slightly astonished. Daddy likes cheesecakes too, said Gavin with a grin. You mean he likes this too? Arissa was slightly taken aback as she couldn't imagine a cold and aloof man like Benjamin to like such sweet dessert. As long as you bring him some, he will eat it. Gavin blinked his eyes expressively. When Arissa noticed Gavin's playful expression, she leaned forward to hold him. Then, she gave him a peck on his cheek. What are you trying to make Mommy do? Arissa asked. Gavin looked at her and replied with a sneaky smile, I'm creating a chance for you to see Daddy by bringing some cheesecake over. When Arissa saw the look of anticipation on Gavin's face, she couldn't help but break into laughter. All right then, let me finish my cheesecake first. In hearty morsels, she finished her cheesecake with joy. After she was done with 2 slices, Gavin barely finished even 1 slice. She wiped her mouth after she was done and took a slice of cheesecake. Then she set off to the study for Benjamin. At the door, Arissa knocked slightly to get his attention. Come in. There came a voice from the study. Arissa opened the door gently and peeked in. She made her way slowly into the study with the cheesecake. Mr. Graham, have some cheesecake, said Arissa as she walked over to him. Then she carefully placed the cheesecake down. With that, Benjamin raised his eyes to look at her. At that moment, their eyes met, and that made Arissa's heart thump excitedly. The atmosphere became somewhat awkward in that split second. Arissa quickly cleared her throat and asked, Are you available now? Just speak, said Benjamin with his body leaned back in his chair. His intense gaze shot directly at Arissa in anticipation. As Arissa felt intimidated by his intense gaze, her eyes darted away with a few blinks to diffuse the tension. She found it difficult to express herself before his forceful demeanor. Do you want to try some cheesecake first? Arissa sneaked a glimpse at him as she felt a sense of apprehension. Benjamin looked down at the cheesecake in front of him. I don't take cheesecakes. At that moment, Arissa was at a loss for words. Still, she conjured an awkward smile and persisted, The cheesecake is delicious, actually. It's perfectly fine to have a slice once in a while. With an unyielding gaze on Orissa, Benjamin suddenly stood up and walked toward her. He came up so close to her she got a whiff of his manly scent. Overwhelmed, Orissa took a step back. Her heart palpitated hard and thumped away uncontrollably. When Benjamin noticed her flushed face, his upturned eyes glinted. Without warning, he extended his long arms and scooped her into them.